Hey guys, I'm Tamter for Zoomin Games, here with Bill, lead writer for one of the highly anticipated games this year, Mafia 3. Let's get straight to the nitty gritty.
Sure.
From what we've seen in the trailers, you're really not shying away from the really harsh and sometimes even controversial topics like we saw the KKK in the trailer, for example. How is that involved with the overall storyline?
Well, one of our big goals was just to make the kind of game as authentic as possible to 1968. You know, it's set in New Bordeaux, our version of New Orleans, and Lincoln is a mixed race character. So we really wanted to have an experience where we have a player character in Lincoln who views the world through a different lens than, say, Vito and Mafia 2 did. But just as importantly, the world views him differently. Right. And we wanted to reflect that in throughout the games, just to make it as authentic as possible.
With Lincoln being a mixed character, what was the biggest challenge in putting him into an environment like this?
I'd say the biggest challenge, it's one we embraced, was just the authenticity of the time and place. So we did a lot of research along multiple fronts, everything from what was going on in the world in 1968, not just in America, but also the Vietnam War, things like that. And that's all reflected in news stories that you can hear as you play the game. But we also did a lot of research into civil rights. That was definitely a big thing in 1968. So as watching documentaries, there's one called Spies of Mississippi, and it's about state governments trying to infiltrate the civil rights movement. To reading interviews with people like Jim Brown, who's played with the Cleveland Browns, he's a running back, and he gave a very famous interview with Playboy magazine actually in 1968, where he talks about his experiences as an African American. And the big one for me personally was this civil rights leader named James Baldwin, who wrote books and a lot of essays, but he did a documentary called Take This Hammer, where he goes around San Francisco and interviews African Americans, and they just have very blunt conversations about what it's like to be in America at that time. So he just brought all those elements in and, again, just making that authentic experience.
Make it your next vacation destination.
This city survived the War of 1812, the Civil War, and God knows how many hurricanes.
I imagine that you can flesh out all those details very much in side quests in the game.
Well, they manage there are side quests in the game. So we have the 3 underbosses, and you do missions for them. They also have people below them, and you do additional content with them, for them. But the time and place really permeates every aspect of the game. Like, we really wanted the player to always feel like they are Lincoln Clay in 1968 in New Bordeaux, and just traveling through this city.
Yeah, the performance of the actors in playing characters in this time period is so far it's been portrayed very, very impeccably. How much fun is it to see your work reflected like that?
It's awesome. I mean, even on the mocap stage, it was awesome. We have a wonderful cast. We have a very diverse cast, and we bring them all together in some of the big scenes, and it was really cool just to see all the kind of nuance and character moments come to life, as they interact with each other off camera and on camera. So that was very rewarding. That's probably one of the highlights for me of working on this game.
Yeah, the combat is also seems very authentic, and how people react to the way they're getting attacked. How do you prepare for such different scenarios? Because there are multiple ways you can approach a mission. How do you prepare people for that?
So the cool thing about Lincoln is that he's a Vietnam veteran, so he's highly trained. He's very proficient, in combat. The thing that frees us up to do on the gameplay side is to open up different avenues. So you can stalk through an area, take the stealthy approach, or you can go in guns blazing. And we really put in a lot of effort to support both of those, specifically within the open world as you take down the criminal rackets. But it also shows up in missions like the Kill Tony mission, where you guys were given the choice of which way you wanted to go in, the quiet way or the loud way. So we put a lot of effort into creating a character that supports both those play styles.
Hello, Lou. Listen, I got money. You can have it. All of it.
And what about the finer details, like the executions? Do you like research into how, what was, let's say, a trend in how, executions were done by mafias in that time period, what they usually did, and incorporate that in the way you perform attacks?
I would say it's a combination of a different, it's an amalgamation of different styles. So, like I said, Lincoln was a Vietnam veteran, so there is the way, especially with like some of the melee takedowns, the way he goes about that is a little more informed by his Vietnam experience. Some of it is just informed by, this is a revenge story, and he's exacting revenge. So it comes from different kind of places like that.
Sorry Burke's all riled up. I know that's a fucking pain in the ass, but splitting this district up like you did just makes things worse.
Bringing back Vito, what was that like? Because he's, a big fan favorite.
Sure.
Incorporating him into the story more as a secondary character to Lincoln. How did you balance that?
We all love Vito. It's funny, just a second ago I was talking about mocap, and one of the first scenes with Rick, who plays Vito, I gave him a hug, and I was like, Vito's back. So we all love Vito too. But this very much is Lincoln's story. But it was important to us to maintain some of that continuity in terms of the franchise between Mafia 2 and Mafia 3. So we spent a lot of time thinking about that, and it just made sense that after the events of Mafia 2 that, Vito would have been exiled. Like, he wouldn't have been allowed to stay where he was. Like, there's no way. So he was obviously exiled down here, and it just makes sense that as an outsider, eventually he would end up working with Lincoln Clay.
So what's the finishing touches you still need to do before the game's out?
Right now, we're just doing polish stuff. We're out on the game ships on October 7th for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, so we're definitely in the home stretch.
All right, really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Pouring one more though. Couldn't pull it off without you, Sammy.